The update on the 3D Star Shooter game. So right now we have some menus. We also created some level chunk scenes that'll take us into the where the terrain gets level or it gets loaded into the level. We have put them into our build profiles for the level chunk 0, 1, and 2. And we can see in the level chunk root the actual terrain we put on there. For the root object, we put our level data script, and on our level data, we have the maximum Y limit that the player can go to, the spawned objects, and the minimum spawn of 2, and a maximum spawn number of 6. And we can come and look at our actual spawn points that we have. We can see here the actual prefabs that it's looking for on those spawn points are like the barrels. We have astronauts. Oh, sorry, we have astronauts. And we have the UFO spawn prefabs. These are gonna be the prefab models that was from Kenny Sprites. I made another one, just this barrel that I made a texture and substance designer a while ago, and I got them to spin. And the level data code, we're gonna be getting the spawn objects parent for those transforms that were in the actual spawns that we have for here. So we can see that what we're getting spawn objects is the transforms for those on this empty game objects that I had made. There's a minimum number and a maximum number of spawns that we can set in the inspector. It finds that the list that we had made, it clears the old list on a replay. It finds the spawn points under this level, and then it adds the found spawn points. If no spawn points that exist, nothing happens. But then if it uh, picks a random number of the spawn points, tries to spawn more than available, and then it limits the available spawn points here. We got it uses the range, and then it finds the chosen spawn points, tells the spawn points when it's in prefab, and removes it so it doesn't get used twice. And then we can see in here, we're setting the player Y limit. We're checking it to see in our actual code for the player Y limit what's actually happening. So it's getting that level data. We have it exposed in the designer or the inspector. We have it set to 50 just because it kind of makes it more fun when we're going to play the game. It's just 30 for the what we have it set at for our level data. We have the so we'll get the rigid body component. They'll check if the level data we actually have it stored. We have it set to 30, so it's in the inspector, and then it finds that first object by the type. We have no level data, it doesn't do anything. This one is if the player, it checks to see if the player is going above the limit, and then it copies that position and changes the Y value, and then it moves the player back to that previous position, so it kind of looks like you're hitting an invisible wall, and then making sure it didn't lose the rigid body, making sure it's there, and it'll stop the movement on the Z axis. The Y axis. And then for the infinite runner, I had to do a bunch of Unity trying to check for how to do how to keep it to get loading the scene. So we can see here I had to learn how to do the scene management, which was a lot of the what it's doing. So this is when we unload the scene behind the player. We can learn how to do additive stuff. But so this is where we're using these system collections on the enumerators and core routines. This was a headache, and I still am confused on all of it, but I got enough to understand where we're trying to get a remainder. So I'm learning, trying to find the thing. So yeah, numerator. So if the chunk length, sorry, I have my scenes at 100 meters by 100 meters. So we're setting two chunks ahead. We're getting 100 off the scale. It checking for the highest chunk loaded is loaded, and then it's making the list of scenes that we loaded um into. So we have the three scenes, level chunk 1, 2, and 3. They're all set at 0, 0, 0. So it's actually getting um, moved up 100 meters every time the scene loads, and then it'll cycle from scene 0, scene 1, scene 2, and then it'll keep repeating that cycle. And that's why we added it into the build profiles. It's getting so it'll start the coroutine to start loading the chunks when we press start. Every update, it's checking to make sure that the player's there. It'll check what scene that the player is in, and then it loads the chunks ahead of it through the start coroutine, and it loads the next chunk. And if the scene behind us, like we clear it, and then we can go to the next scene, the enumerator. So we're doing the chunks ahead, then it, yeah, wait for each chunk to start loading. This yield break, so we're learning that one. And is the, I think my little, yeah, so we're getting yield breaks, so we're able to yield. It has the yield return, yield sync. Where is it? Yield return, no. Yield break is just it waits for the frame to finish. You can stop the coroutine in a pause, and then it checks to make sure it is loading. So what we're doing here and making sure is loading is finished. So is loading that next level, so it's not gonna create a new level until it's finished creating that one, so it doesn't try to create more than one. And then it moves to the next chunk. This one, we're getting the highest chunk loaded. So if we're on 2, and then we get the chunk scene length, and then this one we'll use what's the remainder. So if I'm on 3 and I need 2, it'll give me the remainder of the next one, which is 0, right? And then string scene name, chunk scene name, we get the async operations. And while not load operation is done, so it waits until that next one's finished, and then it pops for it waits a frame, so it doesn't try to pop out more than one. It does the scene, load scene at the scene manager, so we're checking to make sure everything's loaded into um, all of our uh, build um, preferences, the build profiles. So this one can get that scene and loads the next scene, and then it moves the chunk to the correct Z position and remembers that one to remember the chunk, which is, and then it checks is loading finished. Then we go, what we're doing when we're moving the chunk, we're getting that, moving it up 100, so that chunk length right here, making sure that it's up 100, so it'll keep moving it further and further on the Z. And then unload chunks, it's removing that old scene. So it's removing the ones behind us. And then so we can see how everything's kind of working in the game. So what we have so far. So we have our press enter to start. We still have our audio settings. Can turn down the music volume so hopefully you can hear me. And then we can come back and go into play. And then so right now it's loaded the two scenes. We can come around, we can go check out the barrel. Make sure that we can't pick it up because we're at full health. We can see we can hear the UFOs. They now have a health bar. They have the health bar. We can shoot them if I can hit them. And we can see that the infinite runner is now producing scenes ahead of the game. We can see that when we go up to the 50 meters, how it blocks the player. We can't go any higher. We can get our little guys still. They got their sounds. And yeah, it's an infinite runner, so as long as we keep going forward, it'll load those two chunks and remove the chunk from behind us. For the audio, we made an audio manager. We have our player audio to see when I'm pressing the place one shot right here. That's for the shooting sound. And then when we're adjusting the sound volumes, we're still using that sound mixer, the audio mixer with the exposed music and SFX volumes that we can see here. We can see on our audio manager what's happening. So since it was an audio manager, we kind of did the same thing with my game manager, made it a singleton. It destroys any duplicates if it tries to make another one. When we're setting the master volume, we convert it to the decibel volume, and converting to decibel was the code that I got from the previous professor, where we're doing it by the times of 20 and then making sure that it doesn't go below 0, because last time I was trying to figure that out and it was locking all the way down at -80. Um, and then we put on the scenes, we can see that we have their audio sources playing, so that's how it's able to play the sound out of each of the um, screens. We have our sliders on exposed parameters. And then on our Starship player, we can see that we're using the SFX sounds, so those ones keep playing. We'll still have them on our prefabs for the other models as well. So he has this card. I got some of the music from the asset store. And the UFO has its hum on a 3D and then their Doppler effect. So just as you get closer, they'll start making this sound. And then this time I did a canvas, because earlier when I was trying to do the canvases on the 2D game, I found out we can do panels. And so I did panels as child objects of this main canvas. So when I set the anchor point on the canvas, the rest of the panels kind of get stretched to that image. And then I can go in there and like have the press enter to start. And then like the main menu has actual play buttons. So when we turn that one on, we can see the actual menu buttons. I didn't customize the menu buttons for this one. I was trying to figure out how to learn the enumerators, and then I made the barrel prefab with the texture, and that's everything I made so far. Thank you very much.